I really don't know which memo passed me by or what I missed. It's like the snuffleupaguses of the world. Like, where do these guys come from? I even earned 2 cents from YouTube when I hit 1,000. I've already earned 2 pennies. I mean, what the heck? That just, I can't even. I mean, I might as well just quit my day job, right? I actually think today's video might be full of a lot of controversial opinions, so please do not come for me. These are just my experiences reading these books. Hi everyone, it's me, Jess. Welcome, or welcome back. I think there are a lot of new subscribers, so I just want to take a moment to say thank you so much for subscribing to my channel. Many of you have been sent my way by Shelly, so special thank you to Shelly for featuring me in one of her videos about booktubers to watch. As a result of that, I am now above the 1,000 subscriber mark, which is very exciting. Thank you everyone who either shared or suggested my channel to someone over the past 2 years. And for those of you who subscribed and have stuck with me over the past 2 years, I think it's 2 years. It might be a little bit longer than that. Little disclaimer, my dog Granola, who you will see in some of my videos, is chewing on a bone. Oftentimes you will hear some background noise of dogs. I have 2 of them. One is an elderly dog, and she sometimes wanders around the house and makes clickety-clacky sounds with her paws. There's a lot of noise from the street. There's a lot of background noise in my videos, so just FYI if you're new. I am an amateur. I've said this before, but I hope that people are here for the good vibes and the book chats, and I love to talk about books. I can get a little bit rambly. Just by way of introduction for those of you who are new subscribers, that's what you can expect on the channel. I think it's tradition to do a Q&A once you reach 1,000 subscribers, but my Q&A and this whole idea of doing a retrospective of Stalking Kafka's channel are gonna have to wait, because I am packing my bags this afternoon and heading to the UK, which is very, very exciting. In fact, when you are watching this video, I might even be on my flight. I guess this is the first opportunity for me to say, hey, call out for some questions for hitting 1,000 subscribers. If you're new to my channel especially and you want to know more about me or more about my channel, then please go ahead and drop your question in the comments section of the video. Say hi. So yeah, it's very exciting, and I even earned 2 cents. I have so much fun making bookish content and posting it on YouTube that a lot of this, it seems like it matters, but it doesn't matter. With all of that out of the way, I am here to talk about, I don't like to always say reviews because I don't think of myself as necessarily an objective reviewer. I just like to talk about what my experience was like reading books. So I guess in a way, that's a review. I'm going to talk about the 5 books that I read in April. So April wasn't as big of a reading month for me as some of my other reading months have been, and I could not tell you for the life of me why that is. No idea. It could just be because it's the end of my semester. For those of you who are new, I'm a teacher in college. Yeah, I think it maybe was just a bit busy, and I really don't know. Maybe just the timing of starting and finishing books. I'm going to start with a DNF. I don't know, DNF, abandoned. It's possible that I will come back to this book, but I'm very sad to say that Caledonia, which I was really looking forward to reading, I actually went ahead and ordered it on recommendations from other folks on BookTube. I know also some people who watch my channel, also when I talked about Caledonia, were saying, oh, you're gonna love this book. I'm so excited for you to read it. So I really don't know which memo passed me by or what I missed. I gave it a good shot. I got to about 70 pages in. It's a very slow burn, and I just wasn't having a strong sense of the main character. It's not that I didn't enjoy what I was reading, I just didn't feel gripped, I didn't feel invested, I didn't feel interested. I mean, that sounds really, really harsh. I don't know what it was. There was something about the way that it started out which is very, very slow. And normally that's okay for me. I don't know what it is about the writing style or why, or if it was just that sometimes it's a me thing, not the books thing, I'm willing to say. So yeah, I was really excited about this. And I don't know if it's also because there was a build up or an anticipation about this book being so good. And then when I did get to it, I was a little bit let down. And I wouldn't say I lost my patience with it. I would just say that I didn't pick it up because I was picking up other books. And in the end, it just went further and further down the pile of books that I was reading. So it's possible that I may come back to it at some point. I'm not sure. If it really picks up in the second half, maybe let me know in the comments below. Or if I really missed something, let me know in the comments below. I can be easily convinced. But yeah, I just didn't have a strong sense for the main character, Janet. It's about a family. I don't even remember what it's about. It was one of those books where I would read it and then I would put it down and I would have no idea what the book was about and what was happening in the book. And I know that sounds really harsh, but it's unusual for me. I couldn't stay interested in the story, and I don't know why that was. There was nothing compelling about the story 70 pages into the book. Yeah, it was boring. This is what I'm going to say. Controversial opinions. I actually think today's video might be full of a lot of controversial opinions. So please do not come for me. These are just my experiences reading these books. And if you're new to my channel, maybe look at some of my old review videos to get a more balanced sense, because I also rave about books as well. This book was very boring. There was nothing particularly wrong with it. It's just that the story did not get going. And it seems like it's going to be a really interesting, really exciting book. So it starts out with this teenager, Janet, who's murdered. And then we go back in time. We're following her life up until the moment that she was murdered. I can't even say anything more about it because I don't even really remember what I read. And that's not a good thing. That's not good. But I felt no connection to the child, Janet. I didn't feel a big connection to the character. And it just didn't, there was nothing interesting or compelling about the story. For 70 pages, as I said. So no need to belabor the point. I DNF this or abandon it, whichever way you want to put it. And I don't even have much justification for that because I can't tell you anything more than it was just boring, dull. I was so excited when I bought this book. If you go back and watch my Ottawa vlog where I found this book, I was very excited to have found it and to have purchased it. And I was very excited to read it. That being said, I didn't fall in love with this book the way I thought I would. I thought I was going to love this book. I thought it was going to become like a forever favorite. And that just wasn't the case. So Ordinary Human Failings by Meghan Nolan. This was longlisted for the Women's Prize. It was also listed for the Nero Prize. It's a new prize from the UK. This novel is historical fiction. It's set in the 1990s. It follows an Irish family that immigrated to London. We come to learn that the family, as individual members, a lot of personal failures, and they each of their stories is told over the course of the novel. Some of the characters in this family their stories were more interesting than others. Some of the characters were very well developed and presented, and others weren't as well. It's clear that the members of this family have really struggled with personal issues, and because of their status, their social status as Irish and poor, and because of the social fabric and their position in society. And especially once they've immigrated to London, because they really struggled to be accepted in their new neighborhood. The novel itself opens with the death of a young child and parallel stories, the death of a young child and a reporter, this character named Tom, who decides that this is the scoop of his career and he wants to scoop the story. This child who has died becomes the focus of the plot, and this reporter Tom trying to get his scoop. What we learn is that Lucy, the 10-year-old member of this immigrant family, is suspected of either being responsible for this other child's death or that it was accidental, the kids were playing, but Lucy is the the older kid. She's 10 years old, and so suspicion is cast on her. The police interview Lucy. Assumptions are made in the neighborhood about what happened, negative assumptions about what happened, and blame is placed. And Tom wants to interview the family to try to get the full story. That is really the basis of the plot of the novel, and it's the vehicle that Meghan Nolan uses to explore the way that, like, a lot of different things, bias against immigrants, poverty, hypocrisy, the media, in particular through this journalist Tom. Like, he puts this family up in a hotel and he pays for them for food and he gets them drunk and he's trying to get them to talk about their lives and their circumstances, with the aim really being that he's going to expose that there's something really flawed in the family and there's an explanation as to why this happened, and that Lucy herself is somehow guilty. I mean, I guess I don't want to give anything away about what is the result of all of this and the investigation and the questioning of Lucy and her family by the police and then by the journalist. But it was definitely a jumping off point for Meghan Nolan to explore the lives of the individuals in this family and really the demise of these characters, from the mother Carmel, the uncle Richie, and her grandfather as well. Some of these were just better told than others, so it did have a little bit of a disjointed and disconnected feeling to it. It was a little bit clunky in the way that it was written, unfortunately. So it was almost like different vignettes that were stitched together, and I think that that really, for me, that really detracted from the effectiveness of what Meghan Nolan was trying to do. Maybe some of you who've read it and loved it see a different reason for it having been structured the way that it was structured, but it could just be that it wasn't as well done as it needed to be or could have been. That being said, I really, really related to some of the elements of the stories that were being told, and I thought Carmel was a fascinating character. I really related to Richie's story. I won't tell the whole thing, but he basically works in a restaurant and he's an alcoholic and one thing leads to another and he ends up messing up something good. That I felt like that section of the book was so human. I know the title is Ordinary Human Failings, but that I really saw people that I knew growing up in that story, in Richie's story, as Richie. And she did a great job of really setting the tone of what it was like in the 90s as well. Like, I've never been to Ireland, but where I'm from, Nova Scotia, the 90s was a very specific kind of oppressed, impoverished, like people were poor, people didn't have anything, and alcoholism wasn't something that was really acknowledged and treated in the same way that it is today. And I think that she captured those things really well. It wasn't as captivating as I had hoped it was going to be. I did have trouble going back to it, but there were characters and there were parts of it that I really, really loved. I would really like to check out her earlier novel, Acts of Desperation, because I've heard really good things about it as well. And I think I will read whatever she writes next. I think she's an interesting writer, and it was definitely worth my time to read this. It just wasn't quite as captivating as I was hoping it was going to be. I was really, really excited for it too, so I might have set it up for myself to be a little bit of a disappointment. I thought it was quite good at certain things, and that certain parts of the book were very, very effective and very well written. Those Irish writers, they sure know how to get poverty and despair and demise, and they get all those things pretty well. And I do love this cover. I do think it's a great cover. So that was one of two books that I read that were listed for the Women's Prize, and Soldier Sailor is the other one. I also bought this in Ottawa. And Soldier Sailor has been shortlisted, and it's gotten a lot of very positive feedback, a lot of positive reviews on BookTube and elsewhere. I have to say that Soldier Sailor was not my favorite read. I didn't fall in love with this book. I think that this novel has plenty of literary merit. It's written in stream of consciousness style, where we're in the head of a new mom. She is addressing herself to her son, Sailor, and she characterizes herself as the soldier. So through this dynamic of soldier or sailor, she takes us through an unspecified period of time in the very early days of motherhood that are experienced by this young mother. And for me, I had such a weird reaction to this book. So yeah, it's clear that there's a lot of literary merit here. There's no question about it. I think it's an important topic. I think for anyone who has never been a mom, this book will scare the crap out of you. For anyone who has been a mom, maybe you'll feel seen by this book. For anyone who is not able to breastfeed or give birth, probably a good idea to read this book just to get a sense of the kind of horrors of new motherhood, and not in the sense of necessarily like being terrified that something terrible is going to happen, but there are a few scenes like that in this book, but more the absolute grind of motherhood, which it makes sense. Like, she's comparing herself to being the soldier, and it's grueling and it's relentless and there's never a break and there's never time off, and she makes sure that we understand that in the way that she's written her novel. In addition to that, her husband in this story is not supportive, at least not in a way that is meaningful to her, because we're getting the entire story from her perspective. It's her experience. In fact, she seems taken aback by how little he is doing to help her and how little he understands just how difficult what she's experiencing is. So I don't know about that. I think that there are plenty of dads who are more engaged and more available. Although I found it hard to tell from the way that this is written, clearly, even though the dynamic between the parents is very descriptive and there's a lot of unspoken resentment between the two of them, and then outright resentment expressed between the two of them while they try to maintain decency for appearances and for their child in particular. I don't know that this is representative or fairly representative of a lot of fathers in the world. And I guess if you were to take your lens out and try to look at this story or this novel from more of a macro kind of perspective, you can see that her comments in terms of the way that she's written this book have more to do with the patriarchy and the system that doesn't acknowledge motherhood or mothering as being as difficult as it is or as important as it is. And for those reasons, I think that this book has a ton of merit. In terms of a reading experience, this was not a great reading experience. I did not enjoy reading this book because, although I did laugh a few times or chuckle a few times, because I thought, oh yeah, I've been there. Almost like all of the book, I've been there, but I had a very different experience. So as a mom whose child is now an adult, I have a lot of distance from that period of time. I think if you are a new mom and you're closer to this period of time, you will really feel seen by this novel. So yeah, a lot of my response to this book and a lot of reaction to this book, I think, has so much to do with you as a reader. Almost all books do, of course, but this in particular because of the topic. So for me, I had this really weird experience where I was reading this book and I kept thinking like, yes, and yeah, so, I mean, not to discount it, but I felt as if, okay, I lived through this. I did all of these things. I've been there. I've done that. I don't need to read about it. Like, it's not necessary for me to read this. I already know all of these things. So for me, it wasn't as rewarding as it would be for someone who hasn't had those experiences. I even was trying to outdo her. You know, in my mind, I'd read a section, like there's a section where her son has, I think his he has an ear infection or he has a tooth infection. I can't recall which one, but he has some kind of an infection and he's really ill and he's up, he's miserable, they can't get him to sleep, she's had no sleep, etc. And the husband is saying, deal with it, which I just can't even imagine that. It seemed, I did find that the husband was maybe not particularly believable. Like for me, I had a hard time believing it, but I think it's possible, and I think you have to maybe suspend that disbelief to take into account the fact that Claire Kilroy is making a commentary. Again, in my mind, I was like, oh yeah? Well, I was a single mother, and I didn't even have a husband. I didn't even have a husband to be annoyed at because they weren't doing anything, because I was doing everything. And if you think that's bad, my daughter had ear infection after ear infection after ear infection. My daughter puked all over me on the way to the hospital. My daughter puked all over me in the waiting room of the hospital. I mean, being a new mother is the most terrifying experience in the entire world. I used to joke that being a new mother is, and this is like a cynical kind of a joke, I used to joke that there's nobody more vulnerable than a brand new mother, a first-time mother of a newborn. The only person in the world who's as vulnerable as that is like a 13-year-old boy or something. Like, it's just, there's nothing harder. And anyway, there's nothing harder. There's no question. So I think there's really a lot of merit to this book, but it is not this is not a great read. Like, this isn't something that I would be like, oh, my favorite book of the year. I loved this book so much. No, not from my perspective. That's not how I felt about this book. The other thing I wanted to say about my experience reading this book is that there's a section in the book where she befriends a man at the park who is kind of, I think, presented as a counter to this very neglectful husband. And he is a father who is very engaged with taking care of his kids, but he's more removed in the sense that he seems to be a lot more confident in his parenting and a lot more confident in his behavior when he's interacting with the kids in the way that she describes it from her perspective. And she even envies that confidence and I think maybe finds it attractive. And also I think there's the suggestion that, you know, there's a wishful thinking about having her husband be somehow more like that. But maybe I'm reading too much into it. Let me know what you think about that part of the book in the comments below if you want to and you've read it. But I also had experiences like that. I'm being a single mother where I would meet these fathers at the park and I would think like, wow, these are like, it's like the snuffleupaguses of the world. Like, where do these guys come from? So I thought that that was quite well done as well. I think that her including that other male character in the story in addition to the husband really helped to balance this idea that it was very anti-men, because I have heard some people criticize this book for being anti-men, and I don't think it is. I think it's just, but I also found the husband character not very believable. So those are kind of my initial thoughts. The thoughts are still brewing in my mind about this one, but yeah, I don't think that I could recommend this book to people and say, oh, this is a book you just have to read. I think it's worthwhile and it has merit, but I'm not sure that it's for everyone. I guess I put it that way. The next book I'm going to talk about is Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson. I buddy read this one with Lori, who is one of my longtime viewers. She's been a viewer of my channel for a long time and we regularly buddy read, and our buddy reading friendship was born out of this booktube channel, so I'm especially grateful for it. I mean, I had to read this book. It was recommended by many different people on booktube and other places over the last couple of years, and it's true. The cover is accurate. It is about two kids, twins, who spontaneously combust and catch on fire and can set things in objects around them on fire with their fire. Their combustion doesn't hurt them. These fire children are not hurt by this phenomenon, but it's clearly an issue for their family. That's kind of the hook of this book, but it's actually more of a found family story. It's about, I want to say friendship, but it's more like Lori put it as frenemies. it's more like, I don't know how you would describe this kind of friendship, if it is a friendship. It's definitely a dysfunctional friendship between two women, Lillian and Madison, who meet at a prep school. Something occurs at the school and Lillian is asked to leave the school. She doesn't graduate from the school. She doesn't finish school at this prep school, and Madison stays and finishes. And as a result, they both live very different lives. It's not only because of finishing school or not finishing school that they have very different lives. Part of it is also because of their families and ambitions. Lillian is really the protagonist of the story, and it's through her that the story is told of these fire children. So Lillian is definitely not living up to her potential as an adult. She's living in her mom's attic, and her life is really not going anywhere. And then out of the blue, she gets a call from Madison, and Madison wants her to help her with a secret mission. And in the end, the secret mission is to be the nanny to these two kids. Madison has married a senator, and the senator is being vetted to potentially be president or to have a higher office in the government at some point. And they want to cover up the existence of these fire children because they believe that it would jeopardize his advancement and his success. So Madison asks Lillian to come and live with them and take care of these fire children. The children's mother has died. That is the basis of the story. I'm not going to reveal what happens in the story, but I think Kevin Wilson, I had heard that this story was about mental health. So in one of the YouTube videos that I'd watched, people talking about this book, I thought it was about mental health. And then I read the author essay at the back of the book, and it was revealed that the whole idea of spontaneous combustion was a metaphor for anxiety. The thing is that I would have not known that, I don't think, or figured it out exactly if I hadn't have read the author essay at the end of the book. And I think that that is a sign of a weakness of a book. I know that a lot of people really love this book, but I think in terms of how good a book it was, or how good was it at doing what it was trying to do, I think it was only mid in terms of being able to do what it was trying to do, which is unfortunate because I think the potential was there for it to be done better. It's only 250 pages. I think if it had been even 50 pages more, those ideas, that theme could have been better developed. Other themes that are addressed by this plot are the way that wealthy people behave, how badly they behave, and how they treat their problems. The twins being the problem, the senator trying to get rid of them being the way that moneyed people who are interested in power treat problems, or treat things that are unwanted or that are obstacles in their lives. And then the relationship between Madison and Lillian, which has been described by some reviewers. Laurie was telling me about a review where it was described as like one of the best female relationships they'd ever read, which is really strange because it's a really dysfunctional relationship. Madison she really uses Lillian, and she's quite kind of condescending, and she summons her when she wants to hang out with her, and it's just a very strange competitive kind of relationship. And Lillian is sort of in love with her and enamored of her or enchanted by her, and it's just a weird relationship. It's definitely not a healthy friendship, at least from the way that it was written. I had mixed feelings about this book. I thought it was quite commercial. I thought it was entertaining. I'm glad I read it, but I think that there are a lot of things that he was trying to do that could have been better executed. Mostly my issue with it is that all of the other characters in the book, and in particular the two fire children, are very flat. They are almost caricatures. They're not really, we don't really know anything about them, and we don't really get to know them as individual persons, and that I found super frustrating. That being said, Lillian is a fantastic character. She's funny, she's direct, she's this really interesting character, and her character arc is really interesting. That is why I stuck with it, because I wanted to see what happened. So from a plot perspective, it was good, and also because I felt pretty invested in Lillian's character, and that idea of found family, her and the twins finding one another, it had a lot of heart. That aspect of the book had a lot of heart. Mixed feelings on this one. Some people I think will really, really love it. Others might have some of the issues like I had with it. I know there's people that I know who've read it and absolutely love it. So I'd love to hear if you've read Nothing to See Here and what your thoughts were on it in the comments. Feel free to disagree with me, especially guys if you're new here. Please don't be shy to disagree with me. I think the most interesting thing about having a booktube channel and talking about books is everyone's different points of view and different experiences of reading. That's what makes it so much fun. The last book that I want to talk about is a memoir that I read for People April and for Trans Girl April, which were two reading events. We have these reading events on BookTube, as you probably know, that were taking place in April, and I participated, and the book that I read was Pageboy by Elliot Page. I am going to tread lightly with this because it's a memoir, and I think it's difficult to review or be very, very critical of a memoir because it is someone writing about their own experiences. On the one hand, I had so much FOMO about not having read Pageboy because everybody was reading it last year and talking about how great it was. And then when I got it, again, seems to be a theme for this video. I got it and I was reading and I kept wanting more from this memoir. I think that Elliot Page left a lot out of the book. I don't know, purposely, probably to protect himself, to protect his privacy, but it made it less compelling of a read for me, and it was kind of disappointing as a result. The fact that he had the courage to write his memoir and to publish it is significant. So just the act of writing and publishing the memoir was very courageous. But as a read, I just found it was disappointing, and it was lacking in an intimacy and in providing an insight into some of his own experiences, his own internal experiences about his transition and about his identity that I wanted. I would have been there for, I would have been cheering for, but they were definitely withheld. This book was very restrained. I really enjoyed reading all about Nova Scotia. I'm from Nova Scotia, and Elliot grew up in Nova Scotia, and a lot of the book talks about experiences as a kid in Nova Scotia and places that I'm very familiar with and around Halifax, and that was great. I really enjoyed that. But yeah, like I said, it was less interesting than I thought it was going to be. And so it was a little bit of a disappointment for me. And I don't think it was particularly well written, which is unfortunate. Although I know that can happen with memoirs from time to time. So please don't come for me. I 100% support and admire Elliot Page. And I am very pro trans rights. If you're new to my channel, that's important for you to know. But I did find this memoir was less compelling to me than other memoirs that I've read. For example, as a counter, I just wanted to mention All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson, which I read last year around this time, and I will leave my review for that book linked in the description box. I found that to be like way, way, way more compelling as a read, as in terms of getting the sense of what this person's experience of masculinity was like for themselves. And of course, in All Boys Aren't Blue, he's also talking about his experiences of race. So I just found it a little, hit that just by way of comparison. Obviously, they're very different experiences. I just found it was a more compelling memoir. If you're interested in that experience, I do still think that it's worth reading Pageboy, but I think that you need to go in understanding that really most of the experience of the trans experience that's written about is more to do with, at least in terms of operating in society, and particularly operating in society and in the film industry, is more from the perspective of maybe a lesbian experience. But I'd love to hear from people who have other points of view than me, and if you've read it, let me know if I missed, what did I miss, and what you thought of it, and definitely tell me I'm wrong if you think I'm wrong. All right, everyone, so that is a full wrap-up of the books that I read in April. Again, welcome to new subscribers. And again, thank you so much for my regulars. I love you all. And I will look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye for now. It's so difficult when you can't put your finger on what it was that you didn't like a book. Like, you don't have a good explanation, but I'm sorry, I just don't have a good explanation. Of the this immigrant family who have the burden is placed on them of their youngest, I don't know if it's the youngest, but the family's whose young member, so within the family, who are the members of the family? So the mother, Carmel, is a very interesting character. The uncle, Richie, is really interesting. His story was really compelling. And what the fuck am I talking about? Try again.